I was sitting here listening to Max, and what I kept thinking about was the power of technology is so amazing, but the number of things that you as leaders in your business have to think about every day to make that happen is so complex and so enormous that it can actually sometimes be almost overwhelming or to a degree paralyzing. And when I think about what we have to do in the market today, whether you're a new brand just starting, you're a $2.5 billion brand like Shutterfly, or you're a massive global brand like Walmart, in the end, there are dynamics in the market that we're all having to live with. The customer is radically changing. The rate and pace and expectation they have in terms of what it is that we deliver to them is expanding. The technology that we can use to actually create relationships is incredibly powerful, but if it's misused or if we don't do the right things, we actually can violate the trust of our customers. The people and the skills that we need to have in the market are constantly changing in a world where the employment is at the lowest in history. So as leaders, it's really difficult to think about talent. And in the end, really any of us, when we're competing against each other, in the end, it really does come down to execution. So those are the things that I want to talk about with you today and give you my perspective on how you can think about those things, and hopefully the experience that I have can give you some tips and new ways to think about and meet the challenges that you face to drive your brands. So with that, the first thing that I think about, right, is everyone today is talking about how we are really now one of the most connected societies in history, yet as individual human beings, we actually lack relationships. It's a huge dynamic in the marketplace that is actually really powerful, but it can actually be really sad, right? We have more information, we are connected to more people, you worry about the thousands of Instagram followers you have, you think about how you position yourself and your personal brand, you have kids who are continuously having to deal with social media 24 hours a day. But actually, when you step back and you talk to people about connectivity, they don't feel like they actually have real human relationships. Now, the dynamic that I think is actually really positive in that is what we're seeing in new generations of people is actually their desire to connect is really strong. It's why you see in Gen Z research more and more, and certainly larger than ever before, people are wanting to be in physical places. They're wanting to actually experience physical product. They're wanting to experience physical retail. So this digital divide that theoretically has allowed people to step back and actually not be connected is actually leading the consumer to actually change their behavior and actually seek out human relationship and human connection. That's a really powerful trend change that you, as marketers and technologists and leaders in your business, need to absolutely be thinking about, because how brands interact and how brands respond to that dynamic is going to be critical to the long-term success. So no matter what technology you use, whatever marketing tactics you use, however you communicate, in the end, what you have to have in the very core of your brand is clear DNA attributes that really help you understand how you as a brand are not only going to just interact with your customer, but you're actually going to help them create real human connections, because those are the brands that win. I think that's a really critical change in the market over the last 10 to 15 years that I think each of us need to be spending more of our time and more of our strategic bandwidth thinking about. Which leads to this second area of clear innovation that's happened in the market, right? Which is everybody's talking about experiences. Whether it is the growth of the Pelotons and the Soul Cycles, it's the growth of the work that happens with pop-ups all over, the world, where we create these very, very brief moments of like brand experience, right? And we also talk about the fact that the financial market is actually moving in that direction in terms of where consumer spending is going. Right? More consumers are spending less on physical goods, and they're spending more money on physical experiences. And when you think about that, that's a big challenge as a brand, any of us, but it is actually also really powerful. It's one of the things that I think a lot about in a new role that I have at Shutterfly. We are a highly emotional brand, right? I mean, in the end, we are capturing these highly emotional moments in people's lives. weddings and birthdays and Christmas parties and holiday activities and things that are happening in your last trip to Hawaii and all of these things that really create these deeply emotional experiences. But frankly, as a brand for 20 years, we've been a very functional brand, right? We take that emotional attribute, we turn it into amazing product, and we deliver it to you. But in the end, what we're now doing more is exploring how we create experiences for you with our brand and with our product. And these are challenges that every brand is having to think through. At Express, we did the same thing. How do you not just sell product, but how do you actually create a relationship with people where you become a destination, where you actually can bring people together around career and work in a way that fundamentally isn't just about selling them a product, but it's about opening them up to new experiences that they may not have. The other thing, particularly for this group of people, is that we have to remember that when we talk about experiences, we live in, most of us, in cities that have access to a lot of these experiences. But what I would challenge you to think about as a brand is how you scale that into communities that don't have that, right? We can talk about pop-up experiences all day long. You can walk down the street in New York City and you see thousands of them. But if you go to Fargo, North Dakota, where I'm from, or you go to Minneapolis, or you go to Topeka, Kansas, or you go to Austin, Texas, you're not necessarily getting the same access to those experiences. And so what I would challenge you to think about as you think about being marketers, you think about how you deploy technology to create real emotional connections and experiences, is how you do that in places where people won't necessarily have the same access that you'll find in the major cities across the globe. I think that's a huge opportunity for brands, but it's a huge, huge challenge that you really have to think about. The third thing that we obviously are here talking about is technology. And so I'm sure Max and the team really want me to just tell you that I think Bluecore is amazing, and it is absolutely going to drive all of these huge changes to what you do, which, by the way, I do believe that. We were, at Express, what I would consider not necessarily the earliest adopter, but I would say we were one of the most aggressive adopters. And that is my challenge to you to think about. Right, as a leader of a very complex global business, in the end, technology is an enabler to create those connections and those experiences that I was just talking about. But you can get really overwhelmed, right? You sit there, do I need a CDP? Do I need a data hub? Do I need to think about a new website? Am I replatforming it? How do I think about customer data? How do I think about privacy? How many tactics can I deploy that to? How does that manage my media spend? Do I need a mixed media model? And on and on and on and on. And it can get really overwhelming. And I think that the key asset from a technology standpoint as leaders is to step back and think about your portfolio in two ways. The first is, where are you as a brand going to differentiate relative to the other competitors that you compete with, and how will technology enable that? And that is where you have to go hard, heavy, and fast. On the other side of that portfolio is what I call the knitting. I absolutely believe that the long-term winners are the best knitters of capabilities and partnerships across the ecosystem. Because in the end, you're never going to build it all yourself. You won't have the capital structure, you won't have the cost structure. Fundamentally, you'll take on more and more challenges over time. So you really then need to go out and say, of the things that I'm not going to be best at, where I'm going to really put all my resources in, how do I find the best partners that can help me put all of that together quickly at a very reasonable cost that obviously delivers a better relationship with the customer? When you think about it in those two buckets, it suddenly becomes a little bit more manageable. Right? And part of the reason that we worked so heavily with Bluecore when we were at Express wasn't just about the capability they had, but it was about the belief that they had the insight and the intellectual rigor to actually build product in the future that was going to meet long-term needs. So whether it's just about Bluecore isn't really the point. The point is that as you evaluate technology, what I really think you need to think about when you think about your partners in this space is, who are the players that you believe have the capacity to take it farther than where they are today, right? We have a tendency as companies to do very rigorous kind of technical analytics around, do they have all of the features and functions that I need today? And what we miss is, do they absolutely have the intellectual horsepower to be a partner with you as a brand long term? Because that partnership isn't just about the technology, it's about the thinking. and the thinking that these partners actually can help you do. Because in the end, whether you're a team of 2 people, you're a team of 50 people, or you're a team of 1,000 people, you really do need more and more people who can help you think long-term about where you have to go, so the overwhelming nature of the complexity of what we deal with is actually simplified. So from a technology standpoint, you really do want to step back and say, out of the complexity, where are we going to win? How do I partner? And how do I find a partner or a set of partners who will help me drive this business strategically over time? One of the things that I've banned in every company that I've worked with is the word vendor. It's my least favorite word, because a vendor is somebody who provides something that I've asked for, right? And we create a price, and that price is given, and they theoretically deliver it. And oh, by the way, when they don't deliver it, you go in and you can hammer in on them and whatnot. I want you to think about your partners in this space truly as partners. You want them to be successful. You actually want them to make money. You want them to be motivated to win with you. And so I really would encourage you to really think about what partner means in the way you approach the technology that you're using to create these customer relationships. The fourth area that I want to make sure I impart meaningful advice to you on is people. You know, depending on where you are in your career, whether you're in your first couple of years or you've been at it for 20 years, what I would say is that most people spend not enough time thinking about the talent, the structure, and the skills that they need to both win today and win for the long term. Now, I do think as you become more and more senior, your distortion of time should become even greater towards people. I would say in my job today, I spend 90% of my time on people, talent, skills, how the organization is structured, how it works, and how I help them actually get the tools that they need to be successful in what they do. Because in the end, I'm never going to create the best strategy for Shutterfly by myself. I'm going to do it because I put the right people in the right jobs at the right time, and I've given them the tools to do it. But what's always fascinating to me is as I've built teams and as I've moved into companies where I've had to rethink how teams are structured, it's always amazing to me how even some of your most senior, experienced people spend the least amount of time. How many of your employees or associates sit there and say, my manager doesn't show up for their one-on-ones. It's always the thing that's canceled. We never talk about my development. We don't talk about where the structure is. Where's my career growth? The statistics around kind of human capital development is super clear that every employee feels that their career opportunity is not necessarily as great in the current company as somewhere else, and it's because we don't spend enough time on it. So as you, again, are sitting here all day thinking about how technology and marketing will transform the relationships that you have with your customers, what I will say is that the most critical underpinning to all of the decisions that you will make is have you put enough time into the people and into the talent that you need. It's a little bit also why that conversation about partners matters so much. It isn't just the people who work directly for you or the extended team that you have within the company. It's actually the people in your partners. It's a little bit why I fell in love with Bluecore. The first time I met Max and the team, it was actually less about like a conversation about like, okay, are you doing this and what are you going to do next week? And Amanda Craig is sitting there saying, okay, we need to spend all of this money to make that happen. It was this super intense conversation about how we can get to a very different place than where we are today. And so we looked at the Bluecore team not just as a team of people who were delivering a set of capabilities and being smart about it, but it was a team of people who could help us think through it. And so actually, when I think about the players and our partners, I actually think about them the same way I think about my own talent. So I really want to encourage you to walk away today and say, have I spent enough time? The other thing I want you to think about is if the organization itself has structural issues that create challenges for you, those are things that you have to start talking about. No matter what level you're at, there are ways in which you can influence people to do it. It's pretty easy when you're in a job like mine. If I believe we should have a CDO or a CTO or a CIO or a CMO, we can go do that. Now, I actually believe they're all kind of merging into kind of one integrated C-something, because in the end, all of these customer touch points are coming together. But no matter where you are in the structure, think about where it needs to be in the future and make sure you're having those conversations with the relevant people in your teams. And then the last thing that I want to leave you with is this idea that you can do all of these things, but it's really all about the execution. And by the way, everybody loves a puppy picture. The beauty of working at Shutterfly, just as a side note, is I literally every day get to look at amazing pictures of people in the happiest moments of their life with the pets that they love. So literally I get to go to work and I get to think about these things all the time. And then when it's super stressful, you just literally look at a dog that's in a photo book. And it's awesome. So that aside, if you step back and really think about how you have to do this, it really is always about the execution, which is a little cliche. But the point is, it's really actually about the focus that will deliver execution. So again, as I was listening to Max present, I kept thinking about, oh my God, there are all of these things that we need to put in place, and you've got to get all this done, and you've got 17 features and 32 things and 42 marketing attributes, and you've got to spend differently and whatnot. And what I want you to really do, and I don't think this happens enough, is actually drive ruthless prioritization, right? It's super easy to say it, right? Oh, we've got 1,500 projects, we've got to cut it down to 100, we'll do that. And you know what actually happens? You just organize it better. It's not 1,500 discrete projects, suddenly 10 projects become one, but actually it's still the 10 projects. We all know how that works, right? And so what I really mean by ruthless prioritization is cut out the work that isn't going to make enough of a difference. So the story I'll give you at Shutterfly, I walked in, it was the first 30 days that I was there. It's a huge data-oriented culture. It was run by a guy from Amazon for a really long time, and so it was really intense. We wrote memos that were 20 pages long, and we had data coming out of our ears. And I walked into my analytics and testing team, and they said, last quarter we did 123 tests. And I said, wow, that's great. And they were rewarded for it, and everybody was super happy, and it's a test and learn culture, and it's going to drive focus, and all of these things. And I said, out of the 123, how many actually made a difference to the business? And it was, I think, let's call it somewhere around 12. And then I said, well, out of those 12, how many did we actually sustainably implement? And the number was 2. By the way, that's not a bad thing about that team. It's not actually unlike most companies that are out there. We've moved to a place where we reward the A/B test over and over and over again. But we actually rarely have the roadmap or the resources that allow us to then put that into implementation. And so, yay, we've tested all of this stuff to find out that what we're doing isn't as good as what we should be doing, but we still can't do anything about it. So the point I'm on is, as leaders, we are part of that problem, right? We create environments for our teams that we celebrate when they go out and they get super data-oriented and they get super into all of the weeds of what can happen. And we actually lose sight of what the forest actually is. And when we lose sight of it, our teams certainly do. And so what I would encourage you to do, and again, whether you're an individual contributor, you're a manager of a small team, or you're running a big complex group, you really do get to own kind of your 1, 2, and 3 priorities. And I'm not saying everything has to be that simple, but what I would say is the difference in companies who execute well versus companies who execute a lot is the difference between the winners and the losers, right? And what I would encourage you to do is think about how to execute well, because that is what's going to enable you to bring your brand to life in a clear and focused way. It's going to help you create the experiences that consumers are absolutely demanding, where we're helping them create real connections with each other and with the brands. It's going to help you make sure that the technology investments that you're making are the right ones that will deliver value and return to both the customer and to your company. And your people, when you are able to do that, where you're able to be that clear and that focused, will feel more rewarded in the work that they do every day. And in the end, when we all have to show up to work, we want to make sure that we believe that the impact that we're having is positive. So I know you have a very long day ahead of you where you're going to consume a ton of information related to all of the things that you have to do to be successful. But I really wanted to take this time to make sure that you take the time and step back as you're thinking about all of this complexity. And you really think about creating these meaningful connections with your customer, using technology to help you do it, but most importantly, making sure that you're building teams and organizations that truly can drive the focus that's necessary for you to win in the market. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I'm glad I was able to spend a little bit of time. Thank you.